Hey guys, how's it going? This is Johnny on DIY Health, and today we're going to talk about dehydrating. For this very special episode, we're going to talk about dehydrating, and I'm going to introduce to you my very special friend, Yamian.
Hey guys. So what?
That was very dry.
What? How's that dry? I like that.
All right. So yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about dehydrating, and there's 3 principles about gardening that I really like. They're kind of applicable to more areas in gardening, but most definitely drawn from gardening. So 1 is you reap what you sow. 2, you reap more than you sow. And 3, you reap after you sow. So we're going to be talking about something that you can do when you reap more than you can use when you sow. And that's dehydrating. All right, so this here is the Excalibur dehydrator. So one thing I'll mention first about dehydrators is you got all sorts of different dehydrators, very, very inexpensive, under $40. And you've got upwards, Excalibur dehydrators that are upwards around like $200 plus.
Wow.
Some of these newer models are fancy. They've got glass doors, an aluminum body, aluminum housing, but to be honest, they work just as well as the most basic model. Everything else is really just looks. But I will say this, I definitely like Excalibur, definitely recommend it. You can probably find these new or used in very good condition for somewhere between $100 to $200. And there is a difference between like the Excalibur and a more inexpensive or a cheaper dehydrator. Now you can go with an inexpensive dehydrator, but one of the basic features that I recommend is a temperature gauge.
Okay.
Right? A dehydrator is nothing more than just like a very low power heat source, like a heating filament. Sometimes it has like a light source inside and a fan. And it's just like a low, very low temperature oven. And then you're gonna blow in hot air and you're drying out your food. And that's why, it's dehydrating it, sucking out all the moisture, drying it up, so you end up with preserved food that has a low moisture content and therefore doesn't spoil. But some of the cheaper models, they might not even have a temperature setting. They're just whatever temperature you have. It's not gonna work very well. But even if there's a cheaper model that at the very least has a temperature gauge.
This is the temperature gauge here?
Yeah, there's a temperature gauge right here, so you can set it. That should work. And now when you get a dehydrator, you're gonna have a manual. It's gonna give you some suggested temperatures for dehydrating things. I really don't change the temperature on mine unless I'm doing something that has a really high moisture content. So we'll talk about the different things that we dehydrate. I dehydrate everything pretty much around 110, 115 degrees.
Okay, 110, 115.
Yeah, above that, the heat is kind of high, and some people, especially like raw foodists, things like that, they especially tout that, when you go above 115 degrees, you're losing a lot of the food nutrients, right? Now you're breaking down some of either the enzymes or some vitamins that are heat sensitive. But if you keep it to under 115, under 114, you're supposed to keep more nutrients intact, and everything's going to dehydrate. It's just going to be a matter of time.
Okay.
Personally,
so the factor of different varieties is not so much temperature, but the time that is spent under that temperature.
Right. So things that are higher moisture content, like for example grapes, you might want to put at a higher temperature. Otherwise, it's going to take you like 3 or 4 days to dehydrate you and get your raisins.
Okay.
Yeah, the Excalibur works well because it heats very evenly, and it's very accurate, I guess, to the temperature. Some of the other ones, you'll find that they don't heat evenly. Like one side of the drawer, whatever you put on that side doesn't dehydrate as fast as whatever's on the inside. But whatever you got, use it. It all works. And the good thing about dehydrating is that if something's not done, all it needs is just a little bit more time. Now, some people often ask me, oh, can I dehydrate with my oven? Well, some modern ovens have like dehydrate settings, but not all of them. But the thing about dehydrating, it's simple. If you look at this thing here, right? We're going from 95 degrees to like 155 degrees.
Okay.
The lowest settings The lowest temperature setting on most conventional ovens is like 170 degrees.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So it's going to be pretty high. So could you dehydrate? You could try, but you're probably going to end up with extra crispy. So unless your oven really has a dehydrate setting, I don't think it's going to work out very well. So let's talk about 4 things that we can dehydrate, right?
Okay.
When we have a lot of produce or fruit, right? Especially fruit, I think, fruit or vegetables. When we harvest a lot, what can we do with the extras in order to preserve it, or even just to make something special, different out of it? We're going to talk about fruits, and then we'll talk about vegetables. We'll talk about 2 ways to do fruits and 2 ways to do vegetables.
Okay.
All right. First, of course, is our fruit. So, of course, you might not be growing pineapple in this region, but I mean, if you're fortunate enough to be able to grow pineapple, you can dehydrate pineapple. You can dehydrate anything: watermelon, pineapple, berries. Something to keep in mind, right? What you dehydrate is not going to taste exactly like what you get perhaps at the store. A lot of times you look on the back of that bag, and one of the main ingredients after the food that you're drying is sugar.
Yeah.
Right? If you're doing cranberries, blueberries, strawberries, if you buy dehydrated berries, most of the time there's lots of sugar in them. So if you want to do that at home, keep that in mind. Maybe you'll want to use powdered sugar or something. I don't know. I haven't really tried it. With very tart fruit, you could. When you dehydrate, right, and you dry it out, it's going to accentuate the sweetness of whatever you dehydrate, right? You're going to lose all that moisture content, and therefore sugar gets concentrated. But if it's still a very tart fruit, the tart also can get, accentuated.
Okay.
Now, one of the things also that happens when you dehydrate is you have some discoloration sometimes.
Okay.
And what they do commercially is add additives, sometimes like sulfur dioxide or whatever, in order to keep the colors, like apricots, right? You ever see those bright orange apricots?
Yeah. Or the mango, the dehydrated
or the mangoes.
Yeah.
And then you see like the unsulfured and they're like brown, right? Same thing with apples.
Okay.
Like apples, now these are nice and white, but what I did with this is I actually sliced up some apples, and then I actually, go ahead, you can try it out. Sliced up some apples.
Oh man.
And what I did was I put them in lemon juice. And that is gonna keep it a little bit whiter, keep it from darkening, right? So these are pretty good. I've got green apples and I've got Fuji, or Gala actually. And when you dehydrate fruit, it's simple. I recommend you peel it. Because if I had left the peel on these, it's gonna get very hard and very crispy.
Okay,
But,
good tip.
So good idea is peel your fruit, then cut it in slices that are not too thick and not too thin. If you go razor thin, it's gonna get smaller. Like these pineapple rounds were so much larger, and they really shrunk down, just like those apple slices and halves. Now you want to core your apple and peel your apple, I recommend it. And you want to make sure that it's not too small, so that you don't end up with just a really thin and crispy piece of fruit. And dehydrate it to the texture that you want. Some people like their dried fruit a little bit crispier. Some people like it a little bit chewier, moist.
I like this. This is like chewy, almost moist. It almost tastes like the typical Jolly Rancher green apple.
There you go.
To me, yeah.
It's
amazing. Nice. And how long did you? At what temperature and how long did you do this for?
I upped the temperature a little bit, but like I said, I always dehydrate at 115 normally. But and if you dehydrate at 115 with fruits, it's usually going to take over 24 hours to dehydrate. And I can't tell you exactly precise because it really depends on the fruit, and sometimes even just one pineapple over another sometimes. But I just go until it reaches the right texture.
Okay.
Usually just a few short days, and because this isn't really a high energy consumption device, right? I mean, it's just a small heating filament. It's not like if you're running this thing for 3 days, like
it's not that expensive.
No, I mean it's like running a light bulb.
Okay, great.
So that's it for fruit. A few other suggestions actually, right? Actually is persimmons, really good. The trick with persimmons is you dehydrate them when they're super, super ripe, and they get super sweet. They're like candy. I wish I had some to show you. With things like Berries, I said, they're gonna be extra tart. So if you wanna do berries, you might wanna dehydrate, or if you really like them tart, that's fine. I had friends who like to do watermelon and cantaloupe and things like
I
that.
don't think you can do watermelon.
You could do figs, you could pretty much do anything. Again, moisture content is gonna just dictate how long it takes to dry. So let's put this one away. All right, so fruit, you can do whole, but you can also do fruit leather. And it's a different way of doing fruit. So what you do is, you take bananas, for example,
Okay.
and berries, let's say, right? You're mixing something that's tart, but very flavorful with, you know, a sweetener like banana. Blend it together, almost make yourself a smoothie. No need to add any water, make it like a thick smoothie.
Okay, thick.
And then pour it on the sheet. Now you're not gonna pour it on the mesh, because it's just gonna go right through and make a mess everywhere.
Okay.
But you're gonna pour it on either parchment paper or a non-stick sheet for
Okay.
dehydrators, like I got here. If you buy the Excalibur sheets, they're like $10 a piece. If you go on Amazon and get a no-name brand or aftermarket brand, you can buy 10 or 12 for, you know, $10.
Okay.
Almost $1 a piece. So just one way to save some money there.
Nice.
And they work just as well. They might not be as durable, but I've been using these for as long as I've had the dehydrator, and
Okay.
that's several years now.
Nice.
So this is it, really. You just pour it out on your sheet, and it's almost like you're pouring pancake on a griddle,
Okay.
except you're gonna pop it in here and let it dehydrate. And the next day, it usually just happens overnight at 115 degrees.
Okay.
You'll end up with your fruit leather.
Oh.
So you can peel it out. This right here, buddy, is the original fruit roll-up. Try that out.
Wow.
Now, these I really like. You know, if kids have a sweet tooth, you want to get them to have more fruit, have you know this. Rather than buy them, you know, fruit roll-up at the store, get some berries, bananas, blend it up.
This would be
Oh,
a
is that
good
real good?
camping. I would like to take this on camping too.
And dehydrated foods are great for camping, great for backpacking, because they're lightweight and they don't spoil easy, right? Because the moisture content is lower.
Wow.
Now, just one caveat about your fruit leather is if your fruit isn't like your bananas, if you're doing bananas and they're not perfectly ripe, or if you just let it go too long, you might end up with some crispy. You might end up with fruit chips rather than fruit leather.
Oh.
So this is what happens when you dehydrate a little bit too long. But it's still good. It's not spoiled, it's just crispy. So just be conscientious, you know. I'd say overnight is enough. And this shows you right here what happens when you dehydrate for too long.
Wow.
You don't have to worry about burning anything, it's just gonna get extra crispy.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not
honestly,
bad,
I
but it changes the texture a little bit.
I really like what you brought up about the children. Instead of giving them too much refined sugar and things like that, just a natural way and a fun way and a creative way to get them their nutrients from their fruit and also to get that sweet tooth. I really think that's a good point.
All right, so we got fruit down. Let's talk about our veggies.
Okay.
So a lot of times, right, you plant your herbs, you got your herb garden going, and you got more herbs than you can use. So
Yeah.
what do? Well, why don't you save them instead of buying dried herbs, right? So it's simple. This is parsley. So harvested the parsley whole, right? And then what you would do is just put the whole thing in the dehydrator tray.
Okay.
And then you just, if we had a bowl, I'll do it over this tray so we're not getting all over the table, right? But then what you do is just rub it between your hands, right? And there's your herbs.
Wow.
And so that way you put the stem aside, cast the stem off.
Tastes really good.
And this is parsley, for example. And so you can just get a big batch or a few batches, right? You could just load this up with all your extra parsley and just dry them out and just rub them in between your hands. And then you've got parsley,
Wow.
which is gonna be so much stronger,
Yeah.
so much more flavorful than what you buy in the store, which has been sitting in the shelves
Yeah.
and losing flavor over time.
Yeah, wow. And you can do this with dill, cilantro.
Anything, rosemary, sage, mint,
Nice.
peppermint,
Nice.
whatever herbs you like using in your garden. My wife, parsley and cilantro we always have to have that on hand.
Wow.
Basil, always got to have it on hand. And so I try to dehydrate our own herbs as much as we can.
Nice. I like
So
it.
simple, that's herbs. Last but certainly not least, kale chips, man. So you can get something like kale. You harvest a lot of, more than you can eat, right?
Yeah.
And so you can fancy it up. So now what we do is we'll take the kale leaf and we'll destem it.
Okay.
So you're gonna remove the hard stem from the kale, right? So you just take the leaves and just put it in a big bowl. That's it, that's the process. Just remove the stem of the plant. And if you get a little bit of stem in there, it's not a big deal. The reason we remove the stem is because when you dehydrate, all the moisture is gonna be removed, right? The leaf is soft, so it'll end up being crispy and crunchy and something will like dissolve in your mouth. But the stem is gonna be like turn into like a little stick.
Okay. Okay.
So worst case scenario, if you let a piece of stem go in there, it's just gonna be something that you'll, of course, end up just biting into and just cast it aside, you know?
Okay.
Just like a seed from a watermelon, right? No big deal.
These taste pretty special. Did you add anything to them?
And so what I do with these is I create a sauce. You can do a cheese sauce, you can do a barbecue sauce, you can do something store-bought, or you can make it at home. I made it at home. This is actually a cheese sauce, which has no cheese or dairy. It's actually made from cashews.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just like cashews, nutritional yeast, lemon juice, salt, a little bit of water, blend it up. And what you do is you take your big bowl of leaves, just pour it in there and just massage through those leaves, right?
Wow.
Just get the sauce all over the leaves. And then just spread it out on the tray.
Okay.
And we're not using the parchment paper, we're not using the sheet here, right? We're putting it right on the mesh screen.
Okay.
So that you can get that good air circulation so it dries on the bottom and on the top. And then you end up with something that is so much healthier than potato chips, not fried, super nutritious, and very tasty.
Wow. That is awesome.
One of my favorite ways to eat kale.
Yeah.
You could do this with collards and bok choy.
And the
You know.
best thing is you just feel so healthy. You feel so good about eating it. You saved yourself a lot of money. Saved yourself a lot of health. And it's fun and creative.
If you go to the store, find a little bag of kale chips.
Yeah.
You know, like a little tiny 7-ounce bag is like
$2.99.
more than that. It's like 7, 8, 9, 10 bucks
mercy,
sometimes.
man.
It is. It's such a like luxury food. But just
So easy to make.
harvest some kale, make some sauce, or buy some sauce, spread it on the leaves after you remove the stem, and put it in the dehydrator.
I have a question with this mesh. Since you're cooking this on the mesh, is the mesh hard to clean when you do this?
Nope. Take it out, put it under the faucet, and just, you know, wash it with a sponge just like you would anything else, or
Wow.
a little brush. Not hard at all.
And if you were to say, I want to store this food to the side, how long would this, on average, kind of food last? Does it vary depending on the kind of food, or is there a general for the fruits and vegetables?
You know, a lot of people who like to dehydrate in volume, what they'll do is they'll get like vacuum sealers
Okay.
for like their jars, right? So you can put this in a jar, vacuum seal it, it can last you even a few years.
Wow.
Just make sure that you get the moisture content down, right? It's kind of another way, it really is another way to preserve your food. And so it will last you, you know, years, as long as you take out the air, vacuum seal it, and then you just go through it, right? Of course, always putting your newer stock towards the back of the shelf, right? You know what I mean? Use your older stock and your newer stock, kind of put it towards the back.
Dehydrating seems to be pretty simple.
Very. All right, so as you can tell, whether it's fruits or vegetables, it's pretty easy and pretty versatile what you can do with a dehydrator.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so thankful that you came and showed me how to do this. I'm inspired. I hope all of our viewers are inspired. This has really made it click for me how health can be not only interesting and creative, but simple, fun, and inexpensive. And so I thank you so much for showing us, Yamian. All the food was very tasty, and I hope that you guys at home can taste these recipes and let us know and comment below what you think of them as well. We thank you so much for joining us for the kale recipe. We'll put the cheese sauce in the description. Don't forget to check it out. I'm sorry to say that this is our very last episode for this season, but we'll see you next time. Don't forget to plow through that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on How Is It Growing?